How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Chapter 1, Section 4 of the online video course, Chinese Traditional Culture and Spiritual Healing. I'm Xiaohen Bi, a teacher at Guangdong University of Foreign Studies.
I always feel being despised. What should I do to overcome this? What should I do to live a dignified life?
People now are being divided into upper, middle, and lower classes by utilitarian criteria. As a result, people all look up to the strong for the social prestige, and they are afraid of becoming the weak for fear of humiliation. Whether weak or not, the way Zhuangzi sees it, however, is different from personal and worldly standards. In his philosophy of Tao, everything is equal. When we look at things in the light of Tao, they are neither noble nor mean. 利与西施道通为一. It says, the ugly man and Xi Shi, one of the four famous beauties in ancient Chinese history, in the light of Tao, are all reduced to the same category. They are neither strong nor weak, because each has its own value. Here is a dialogue from Zhuangzi. Master Dongguo asked Zhuangzi, "This thing called Tao, where does it exist?" Zhuangzi said, "Everywhere." "You must be more specific," said Master Dongguo. "It is in the ant." "As low a thing as that?" Master Dongguo was surprised. Zhuangzi continued, "It is in the weeds." Master Dongguo was stunned. "That's even lower." Zhuangzi was not satisfied yet, continuing to challenge Master Dongguo's perception by saying, "It is in the tiles and shards, and it is in the pits and shit." This is a parable. Master Dongguo regards Tao as the supreme being, taking it as the property of the noble and the respectable. For Zhuangzi, the unifying Tao exists everywhere. There is Tao in the ant, in the weeds, in the tiles and shards, even in the pits and shit. All these are seen as tiny, trivial, and humble by worldly standards. Even the most ordinary grass, when wrapped in the color of nature, can totally be themselves. The Tao never thinks less of them than the beautiful flowers. If you don't believe it, you can ask the innocent children. For children, everything in nature is a wonder, for there is no difference between grass and flowers. When a child finds the diamond dearer than the crystal, sadly enough, he has grown up. So what troubles us is not the fact that we are weak, but rather it is the common opinion of weak and strong. The opinion comes from people's practical minds, yet it is not the inherent nature of the world. Zhuangzi states that when it comes to the distinction between noble and mean, each thinks of himself or herself as noble and despises the others, because they tend to see their best quality in themselves. Likewise, we, being narcissistic, are prone to think highly of ourselves and poorly of others, for we compare our strength with their weakness. There is an excerpt titled "The Autumn Floods" from Zhuangzi. People tend to assume the autumn floods refer to floods in autumn, including quite a few Chinese scholars and sinologists who wrote notes for Zhuangzi. In fact, the autumn floods is the summer floods because Zhuangzi adopted the Zhou calendar, which is 2 months ahead of our current lunar calendar. So July, August, and September of the Zhou calendar is actually May, June, and July in the lunar calendar. We all know that flooding usually occurs in summer. Here is a parable from the autumn floods. The time of the summer floods came, and the 100 streams poured into the yellow river. The racing current was so great that the river god was beside himself with joy, believing that all the beauty in the world belonged to him. Following the current, he traveled to the North Sea and could not see the end of the sea. Now he didn't carry that proud look. Facing the sea god, he said with a sigh, "If I hadn't come to you and saw your vastness and boundlessness, I would have thought that I was the most remarkable. It was really ridiculous." The sea god said, "You can't discuss the ocean with a well frog. He's limited by the space he lives in. You can't discuss ice with a summer insect. He's bound to a single season. You can't discuss Tao with an ignorant person. His ideas are bound by the education he received." Now you have come out beyond your banks and borders and have seen the great sea, so you realize your own limitations. From now on, it will be possible to talk to you about the great principle. Of all the waters of the world, none is as great as the sea. But I have never for this reason prided myself on it. I sit here in the universe, like a little stone or a little tree sits on a huge mountain, or a grain of rice in a big barn. I am so small. What right do we have to pride ourselves and belittle others? This parable reminds me of a story that I once heard. There was a man who loved literature. One day he plucked up the courage to show his writing to an author on the cusp of recognition, to ask for his advice. The author thought it was so bad that he told the man to give up. Did it ever occur to this author that his work would be seen as bad writing if compared to that of Lu Xun's? Quite to the contrary, Lu Xun always helps the young people who love writing. Very few will disagree if we call Lu Xun a master of Chinese literature, right? There were people trying to talk him into competing for the Nobel Prize, but he modestly turned it down and said, "I don't deserve it, and I need to work harder at it." In this case, this rising author is probably the river god and Lu Xun, the sea god. This reminds me of another story. Ji Xiaolan, a grand secretary in the Qing dynasty, once traveled to Mount Wutai. Upon entering the temple, he was sized up by the abbot, Fang Zhang, who thought he was an ordinary visitor. The abbot said with a tone of dismissal, "Sit." He then added, "Tea." Later on, being informed that the visitor came from the capital, he hurried to lead Ji into the interior chamber. Hat in hand, he said, "Please sit, serve tea." After a long conversation, he found out that the visitor was actually the director of the Board of Right, Ji Xiaolan. With a nervous look, he hurried Ji into his den chamber and said, with an awkward smile, "Please sit in the seat of honor, serve prime and tea." Before Ji took leave, the abbot brought some paper and a brush. He begged Ji for a calligraphy work to honor the temple. Soon, Ji completed a couplet with a single stroke. The couplet read as follows: "Sit, please sit in the seat of honor. Tea, serve prime and tea." Seeing this, the abbot felt embarrassed instantly. The abbot is the snob. He looks down upon ordinary visitors and looks up to the distinguished. When he looks down, he puts on airs and despises others. When he looks up, he fears and panics and despises himself. The only thing he didn't learn is to stand on equal footing with others, which means neither being servile nor arrogant. That way, he not only shows respect to others, but also has self-respect. This story tells us that everyone should uphold serenity and equality. Don't despise those who are weaker, for we don't want to be despised by the stronger. No one can say for sure he is the strongest of all. Judged by the common opinions of strong and weak, everyone is bound to be belittled and denied. This is exactly why even the strong feel frustrated. There are quite a lot of people confined by the common opinions of strong and weak, making the distinctions of the high, middle, and low. They look up to the higher and look down upon the lower. We are probably unaware of the fact that when we look down upon someone, we are looked down upon by others. If we want to put an end to discrimination, we cannot do it by striving to turn ourselves into the high class, because the high class also suffer from discrimination from the higher. There is no way to ensure that one stays superior. To truly free us from discrimination, we need to reach a consensus that everyone is equal. There is the one who is richer, more powerful, and better educated, but there is no one that is more noble than the other. If the distinction between the strong and the weak lies in their differences in wealth, power, and education, it shouldn't upset us. What is really upsetting is that the distinction is essentially about dignity. Feeling equal is like feeling at home on earth. When we truly believe in equality, we will treat ourselves, others, and the whole world equally. When everyone is equally respected as human beings, we won't be so afraid of falling down. For we believe that we are always on the same vast earth. We've now reached the last section of chapter 1. Before we finish this chapter, I have 2 questions for you to think about. 1. What do you think is the moral of the parable, the river god and the sea god? Explain it to us. 2. How do you understand when we look at things in the light of Tao, they are neither noble nor mean? Take care!